I mean, I'm interested because when I was growing up, we had gardens.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like even when I lived in the city,
Right.
you know, like we always, you know, like my family, like on my mom's side especially, they were Italian, so
Yeah.
everybody had to have a garden.
Yeah.
So all their own produce, and you know, like so we always had, especially tomato plants. You know, like 'cause it seemed like it was the easiest thing to grow a lot of the time.
Well,
But-
I mean, I'll tell you a little bit about here. We normally do around 5,500 or 6,000 tomato plants. We normally do about, I'm going to say 500, 550 in the high tunnel, and then we do all the rest outside. Normally, when we start getting the field ready, we'll start hopefully sometime in May, just prepping it, fertilizing it, tilling it, and spraying it. And then by the end of May, we'll have all this irrigation laid with the plastic mulch, and then we'll basically be ready to be planting the end of May. Some of the varieties we use are, you know, kind of common. One we use is Mountain Fresh. That's always been a very good variety, especially up in the Northeast with all this wet weather we get and colder conditions. But this year it's been actually pretty dry, which is good. Other varieties we've done in terms of like sandwich tomatoes is
Sandwich tomatoes are probably really popular, I would imagine.
Oh, in this area, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. And another variety is the Athelia. That's like a nice later tomato variety. So we do some of that in the later season. But for the most part, we do Mountain Fresh. That's just a good disease-resistant variety. And what we do normally with the tomatoes, we'll spray for blight with a fungicide. We normally mix the fungicides up because if you don't, a lot of these blights and late blight, early blights, they'll get immune to it and it won't really work as good. So it's good to sometimes mix them, sometimes, you know, change it up, and usually keep on a nice spraying schedule, you know. But so that's about what we do for the field tomatoes. And we also, you know, every so many times a week we'll fertilize them, make sure we're giving them the nutrients they need, because we do different types of fertilizers so that we could help the plants grow, and then not only make the plants grow, also make the fruit grow as well.
Are you having to split things up when it comes to your fertilizer? Is it like because you see like the different, like when I look at something in the store, you have organic and not organic, right? When it comes to the produce, like does that, how does that affect things when you're talking about
like
fertilizer?
For being organic, that's basically not using any sprays, fertilizers.
No chemicals. Right?
Yeah, we're not considered organic because we do spray our produce for, like I say, blights. We fertilize through the irrigation, but through, you know, different methods and very, how'd you say, we're a little bit more far along than we were a few years ago, you know, in terms of growing and harvesting. And then now looking at the crop, I mean, we planted, like I say, the beginning or the end of May, and we're probably looking at picking our field tomatoes in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I've already actually seen some red tomatoes in the field, so that's pretty good. With this, like I say, with this hot weather we've had, it's made things just pop, grow, and develop. And you can see, like on the top of the plants, this is the second set of fruit you'll be seeing.
Right.
You'll probably be seeing this more in actually in September. But down here, towards the bottom of the plant, you can see the earlier fruit.
Oh yeah.
And that'll, like I say, that'll probably be able to be harvested in about 2 weeks, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Depending on weather. But with this heat we're supposed to be getting, I'm sure it'll be ready. And one good thing for us this year is, since we had the hot weather, a lot of guys have been having a hard time with irrigation and trying to make things grow with the lack of rain. But since we have the irrigation, we've been able to continuously water our plants, and from that we're doing pretty well. So
these varieties you were telling me about, are any of them, like, are they vintage varieties? Like some of them are heirloom?
None of them are heirloom. They're actually really, a lot of seed that nowadays is basically all GMO. It just depends what type of brand it is. They make a lot of different ones, but I could say this is like an earlier GMO variety we plant. It's actually one of the varieties my grandfather would use a lot, and I took that and you know, just from the family telling me kind of what to try to use, and I went with it, and it's a decent variety to go with.
Well, that's kind of cool when you have stuff that's actually been in the family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like passed down. And,
yeah. A lot of the stuff I've learned has been from family, from uncles, just that helped me out, you know, in the process.
Yeah.
And that's all we started out with,
Right.
me and my wife. Then the next year we did a little bit bigger. I built a makeshift shed, and we had that up on the top of the hill, and that was our second year.
Right.
And then the third year we decided to go a little bigger, and I put a parking lot in. I put a little shed in. It's actually one of the sheds that's up there at the farm now.
Oh,
that's
okay.
actually our new grading room for our vegetables.
Right.
And then the fourth year, me and my wife decided to build a little bit bigger, and we built this. So we've been down here. This is our second year now, and things have been going pretty well. We got a lot of clientele from the community. We've been selling our farm fresh honey from our farm, our maple syrup. We do maple syrup in the early spring months. We have quite an assortment of that, and you know, of course, the vegetables we grow. So
It's amazing.
it's came a long way in a short amount of time. I mean, like I say, we started about, it had to have been, in 2016. So it's come a long way, you know, from starting from something really small. And originally, I didn't anticipate it to get this big because I just did it as a hobby, you know. I mean, I just enjoy doing it. So today,
cool.
where we're at, I never pictured being here. I really didn't, you know. It's just the support I got from friends and the community, and this is where we're at, you know.
So that's a great success story.
It
I
is.
love that.
I just never thought I'd be at this point. Well, this is our one high tunnel. We built this about, I'd say, 3 or 4 years ago, and this is where I basically started with my tomato growing. In here we could fit about 550 plants. We got 10 rows going, and this is all like the one same variety. You could do a lot of, you know, different varieties, but we just choose to go with one variety to get an early crop of tomatoes in. We planted these, I'm going to say, probably around mid-April, late April, and we just started picking about 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So
how much of a yield do you end up with 500 plants?
so far, because I record it, we've gotten about 3,500, 4,000 pounds of tomatoes so far.
Wow.
So it's been a pretty good year in terms of being in the high tunnel.
Yeah.
And this is all run with irrigation, so we don't have to worry about watering them all by hand or anything like that. We fertilize through the irrigation, we water through the irrigation, and it works really well. We have a plastic mulch down for weed control and such, and that's basically what we do inside the high tunnel. It's good for disease control. We don't have to really worry about spraying because we're able to control the environment basically.
Right.
We could water when the plants need it, and when it's cooler out, we could close the sides up, keep it a little bit more warmer in here so things keep growing. And especially with the sunlight, I mean, when it's warm in here and you got a good sunny day, I mean, things just pop. The plants really do well. So
you were saying earlier that it gets up to like 100 degrees sometimes in here, right?
Yeah, that's why we got a vent and a fan for ventilation, because like in an early spring day, I mean, you could have a 50 some degree day and a little bit of peaks of sun, and it could still get up to 85, 90 degrees and even 100 degrees. So it's important to have these going so it can at least get the airflow going and keep it a little cooler.
Yeah.
And then if it does get a little bit hotter, we'll crank up the sides a little bit because you're able to control the length of the sidewalls for ventilation as well. So that's very helpful in terms of controlling how much heat we have.
No, like considering that we do the cooking series, what would you suggest to us in terms of like when we get certain types of tomatoes or fruit, I guess.
Right.
In like, how does that affect the produce? I guess the
produce.
Yeah. Like,
well,
can you tell when you get because I know the end product.
Yeah.
Is, you know what I mean? Like, can you tell the difference
in the quality of the product?
I mean,
you're always I'm going to say about 85% of the time you'll get beautiful tomato inside. Just because when you get that, if, for example, when you get that pounding rain on tomatoes, if they're in their ripening stage, that could just crack them and create rings on the top of the tomato. Mm-hmm. And that number one sandwich tomato that you had now goes to a number two or a canner, right, depending on how intense the rain was. Yeah. Inside, when you're able to shield it from the rain, you got beautiful tomatoes, big and small, and you could really control quality. So that's why having a high tunnel is so beneficial. So I'd say having a high tunnel is well worth an investment, especially in terms of using it for cooking and stuff like that.
Do you do different, like when it comes to putting the soil together for growing in the high tunnel? Is it different than when you're doing it outdoors? Like, are there certain things you do for certain crops?
We do about the same for the inside tomatoes and outside tomatoes. We always soil test every year. We just want to make sure that we're getting the nutrients we need in the soil for the crop. So, some years it might be different. You might be adding a different fertilizer than you did last, just to keep the pH up so that you could have a good crop. Right. But yeah, we basically do the same thing. Just we always soil test, because it seems like every year after you have one crop, you're going to be lacking something. You're going to need to fix something, or maybe the year before the crop wasn't so good. So you look back and say, this is why we didn't have a good crop, and we could do better the next year by those soil tests. So they're very important to do.
Yeah. I became aware of that even with doing gardening. Right. As even growing up, like I remember when we had the Mount St. Helens thing when I was a kid. I remember my mom being like, the ash was the most amazing thing for the tomatoes, because it was like they had so many tomatoes that popped up. It was like they couldn't get rid of them. It was almost like everybody had these huge tomato crops.
Yeah, gigantic tomatoes.
Yeah. So that's why I was curious about like the soil and what you have to do. Like, what's the difference between when you're growing outdoors and when you're growing indoors? Right. Right. If you're doing anything different soil test wise.
Yeah, we do. The one thing that we sometimes do, I'll get tissue samples of the plants. That gives us a little bit more information about what's going on with the plant as it's growing. And that actually could be better than just testing the soil. If we had a problem, I know last year we had some of these rows were really lacking. I had no idea why. And we were lacking something strange. It was something like lack in magnesium. And we fixed that through the irrigation that we use with the fertilizer. And that we had a decent crop. It wasn't as good as this year, but we still saved a lot of our plants. So, but those tissue samples we do, they're worth it as well, So we got a few beehives on the farm. They're really good for pollinating some of our crops, but right now we got about, I'd say, 10 beehives going. A few are from last year that overwintered, a few packages I bought, but for the most part, so far this year, they're doing pretty well. Normally when we extract their honey, we normally get around, I'd say 150, maybe 150 pounds of honey per hive. If it's a good, healthy hive. Some years you'll get 75 pounds, but on average, you're looking at 150 pounds. Wow. I know last year we had a very good honey crop. We did about, I'd say, 950 pounds of honey off the hives we had, which is really good. But the bees, for the most part, they've been doing well this year. It's been a nice dry year, so they're able to get out and pollinate. Right. It is good to have the rain though, because that helps things grow and get other things growing so they can pollinate it. But in the earlier months, we do have a lot of honey flow around here. We got a lot of clover that they could pollinate. We got a few locust trees. My grandfather planted them years ago, and they have a nice flower in the early springtime, and they pollinate the heck out of those. We got some basswood, so they get honey from that as well. And then, the soft maple budding out in the woods. But in the nice summertime, the bees are able to pollinate a lot of our squashes, especially our summer squash. And that's beneficial to us in two ways: being able to have more honey, and then being able to have a lot of our crops being pollinated. So it's a win-win for us. So
how does that affect the honey collection of it? How does that?
Well,
because of different crops. And
you can definitely see the difference in different honey. when you have that locust and clover honey, you're going to have a really light honey, and that's when you know it's from the early spring. When you're towards your fall honey, when you have, you know, your winter, not your so much your winter crops, but say for example your goldenrod that comes out, the ragweed, when that all blossoms out, you're going to have a really darker honey, and it's, you know, it just depends on what you're looking for. Some people like light honey, some people like dark honey. Personally, I like the dark honey.
Yeah.
You know, I just like the flavor of it. But you could, it's really amazing to be able to see the difference.
Really good,
you know,
hot toddies.
they are
Especially in the
good.
fall.
Yeah. But and then there's one other honey that you can get that's really dark. That's buckwheat honey. I don't know if you've ever had it. It is just as dark as molasses,
Yeah.
and it's very rich. A little too rich for me, but it's good, you know. But
What do you feel like is most beneficial in terms of health? Because I know there's a lot of people that do the different types of, you know,
I'd
the
have to say,
honeys and things like that.
I mean, depending on what, because a lot of my customers, they buy it for their allergies. I mean, when they come to the store, they want it because they hear that if they get local honey, it takes care of the allergies, which that's 100% right.
Right.
In the
Almost like an
springtime,
antibiotic.
in
Yeah.
the springtime, if you get the early spring honey, that'll benefit you because you won't be, you know, as allergic to the pollen that is around you at that time. And then in the fall, when you have your ragweed, your goldenrod, and that high pollen count, I mean, if you get that honey from that time of the year, that'll definitely help with your allergies. I personally have allergies, and it helps me a lot.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And bees are amazing. I mean, you could use bees for so many different things. I mean, as weird as it sounds, my grandfather, when he was still alive, he would actually get a bee or two and put it on his hand, and he would let the bee sting his hand because his arthritis was so bad that the swelling and the numbness of it helped him be able to move his hand a little bit, and he was able to use his hands better. So I mean, he used the bee venom for something as weird as arthritis, you know. So bees are just amazing, you know. And you could use so many things from bees. I mean, you got the honey, you got the wax. I mean, everything they make is you could use.
Yeah, we use it even in cosmetics. People don't realize that it's like a lot of it's used in cosmetics. A lot of the stuff you put on your face is actually made out of either honey or beeswax.
Right.
You know.
And it's amazing, like how a bee knows how he should pollinate, how he should work the hive, because a bee's life is very short. I mean, these bees, I think, in the strong honey flow, like this time of the month, or this month, they might only last, 3 weeks. I mean, they don't last long at all.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many eggs the queen could lay. She could lay thousands at a time. And really, when you have a strong working colony in mid-summer, you could have like about 75,000 bees to a hive. I mean, it is unreal.
Wow.
It is unreal. So you wouldn't think that many bees could live in that, but they do. So
Yeah.
it's amazing.